Once upon a time, next to a big forest, lived a little girl with her mum and dad. Each time the little girl went into the forest, she wore a red hood. Everyone called her Little Red Riding Hood. One day, her mum had baked a cake. The cake was a present for Red Riding Hood's grandmother. Grandmother lived on the other side of the forest. Red Riding Hood's mum asked her to take the cake to Grandma. Mum told Red Riding Hood to keep on the pathway and not stop anywhere. She told her not to talk to strangers. Mum and Red Riding Hood waved goodbye to each other. Little Red Riding Hood went into the forest. She had a basket on her arm with the cake inside. A big bad wolf was watching her. He was very hungry. Little Red Riding Hood did not see him. He came beside Red Riding Hood. The wolf tried to sound friendly. He asked Red Riding Hood where she was going. She told him she was going to see her grandmother on the other side of the forest. The big bad wolf told Red Riding Hood that she should pick some flowers for Grandma. As Red Riding Hood was picking the flowers, the wolf ran off. He wanted to get to Grandmother's house before Red Riding Hood. The big bad wolf arrived at Grandmother's house. He knocked on the door. Grandmother asked who it was. The wolf changed his voice and said it was Red Riding Hood. Grandmother said the door was open. The big bad wolf let himself in. Grandmother saw him and began to scream. Before she could do anything, the big bad wolf swallowed Grandmother up. The big bad wolf was not satisfied. He wanted to eat Red Riding Hood as well. The big bad wolf dressed himself in Grandmother's clothes. He climbed into her bed. He waited for Red Riding Hood to arrive. Red Riding Hood came to Grandmother's house. She knocked on the door and asked if she could come in. The big bad wolf changed his voice. He sounded like her grandmother. He told her to come in. Red Riding Hood said what a deep voice her grandmother had. The wolf said it was better to greet her with. Red Riding Hood moved closer to her grandmother. She said what big eyes she had. The wolf said they were better to see her with. Red Riding Hood said what big ears Grandmother had. The wolf said they were better to hear her with. The wolf told her to move closer. Red Riding Hood said what big teeth she had. The wolf told her they were better to eat her with. The wolf jumped out of the bed. Red Riding Hood screamed. Red Riding Hood ran from the house. The big bad wolf chased her. She saw a woodcutter. Red Riding Hood told him that the wolf had eaten her grandmother. The brave woodcutter picked the big bad wolf up. He shook him and the grandmother came out. She was shaken but safe and okay. The woodcutter, grandmother and Red Riding Hood all watched the wolf run away. They were happy now. The big bad wolf had gone. Red Riding Hood and her grandmother thanked the woodcutter. Little Red Riding Hood told her grandmother and the woodcutter that she had learnt a lesson. She would always follow her mother's instructions and never talk to strangers again. Once upon a time, on the edge of a big forest, lived a little girl with her mom and dad. Every time the little girl went into the forest, in a red hood she would be clad. The little girl felt so safe in that forest, all because of the red hood she wore. The little girl's name became Little Red Riding Hood, a name that she did adore. One day the little girl's mom baked a cake all tasty and sweet. It was a present for Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother as a treat. Grandma lived on the other side of the forest, so her mum told her to go, as long as she stuck to the pathway and went fast and not too slow. Told her not to stop or talk to strangers along the way, to always keep walking, walking on, and never ever to stray. So off she went into the forest with a basket on her arm. Her mum hoped Little Red Riding Hood would not come to any harm. Little Red Riding Hood walked down the pathway, and the big bad wolf she did not see. The wolf was very, very hungry and watching her from in front of a tree. He was thinking of eating her and trying his best to take a look at which way and which pathway Little Red Riding Hood took. Inside his head, he came beside Little Red Riding Hood. The wolf tried to be friendly and in a voice which sounded sweet and so good. He said, "Where are you going, little girl?" He showed her a nice big smile. "To my grandmother's place," she said, "it will take me a little while." The big bad wolf started to walk with Little Red Riding Hood along the path. "You should pick these pretty flowers for your grandma," he said with a laugh. As Little Red Riding Hood was picking the flowers, the big bad wolf ran. He wanted to reach grandmother's place before her, as he had a plan. Little Red Riding Hood knocked upon her grandmother's door. Little did she know that the big bad wolf was waiting in the house, waiting for her to show. Grandmother, it is me, Little Red Riding Hood, she called out. Come in, the door is open. In a changed voice the wolf did shout. Little Red Riding Hood did think grandmother did not look or sound the same. My, what a deep voice you have, she said, as the wolf spoke her name. All the better to greet you with, the wolf said, come closer to me. My, what big eyes you have, she said, the wolf said, all the better for me to see. She said, the wolf said, all the better for me to hear. The big bad wolf said, Little Red Riding Hood, come closer to me, my dear. My, what big teeth you have, she said. The wolf said, all the better to eat you with, little one. He jumped out of the bed and tried to pounce, but Little Red Riding Hood had started to run. Little Red Riding Hood was very scared, and from the house she ran and ran. She went as fast as she could until she saw a man. He was a woodcutter chopping wood, doing his job close by. A big bad wolf ate my grandmother. Little Red Riding Hood did cry. The woodcutter was very brave, grabbed the wolf and shook and shook. Grandmother came flying out with a rather worried look. She was scared and very shocked, but otherwise she was okay. The big bad wolf was upset and really did not want to stay. Was Little Red Riding Hood. They had been left unharmed, which was really very good. The big bad wolf ran into the forest and hopefully would not be seen, because he was very frightening and he was very mean. Dear sir, thank you, Little Red Riding Hood, and her grandmother said. He said to them, you are welcome, at least the wolf has now fled. Little Red Riding Hood just had to say, I'll never talk to strangers again. Little Red